Right, hello everybody, welcome to the 56th episode of the Online Tennis Podcast. It's me, Jack, and today I am joined by Owen Lewis. How are you doing, Owen?
Doing well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Owen's doing me a big favour coming on today. He is here to talk about with me Hamburg on the ATP and the WTA side. We also had Gstaad on the ATP side and Palermo on the WTA side. We're just going to run through it, do a little bit of analysis on maybe that final yesterday with Musetti and Alcaraz, and then other bits and pieces basically scattered throughout. Owen, are you happy to start with what Hamburg was about to say, Gstaad? Are you happy to start with Hamburg on the ATP side?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, two players in the final. I'd like to talk about both their paths there and then the final itself. Musetti first. I don't know how much of Musetti's story you caught this week, Owen, but he is making a bit of a name for himself as a tough guy to put the match to bed. Basically, that's the wrong way of wording it. He struggles to put the matches to bed at the moment, or certainly did in this run. And that was the case in Forley as well. In his challenger run, all of his matches went to 3 sets. This week, Ruusuvuori took 7 match points before he put Ruusuvuori away. A guy really he should be beating on a clay court, even though Ruusuvuori is a quality player. Hits very flat balls. It's not the kind of opponent that should be beating Musetti. And then ADF, he was up a double break in the second set, lost his way a bit at the tail end of that set. Fran Cerundolo, obviously Fran Cerundolo was on a tear, and that was a really good win in and of itself. However, 40-15 up 5-4, the underarm serve and volley was...
Right, I did see that.
Yeah, absolutely abominable choice of shot. That was visible nerves. I don't think it was, he thought that was a good idea. It was definitely visible
Never
nerves.
On match point. You
never
should know
on
this
match
from
point.
Medvedev. He suffered so everyone else could soar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Medvedev did the hard work. Was that against Tsitsipas?
Yeah. Oh God, that one still hurts me because I was live blogging that match and I wanted to see a tiebreak and he hit that serve. I was like, no, what are you doing? It was like what was going to happen was just telegraphed into everyone's brains before it happened.
It's quite cringy to watch, certainly if it goes wrong, I would say. I think ADF's maybe the only guy that has got away with doing it positively, probably everybody else. Say also did it against Alcaraz, by the way. I don't know if you saw that, underarm serve and volley on match point as well, and he lost that point too. But he pulled that one off a little. To be fair, he pulled that one off a little bit better. Just Alcaraz came up with a really good pass. Either way, it's nerves. There's no way it's not nerves. The guy looked tight at his tail end of the match. It was it was a recurring theme throughout the week, so it wasn't just an isolated incident. Is it something he could get over, or does that just take being in these big matches? Are you generally impressed with Musetti's game besides that, or?
I'm impressed with him on clay. And as far as the leads thing goes, because I was thinking he's now blown 2-set leads in consecutive years at Roland Garros.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
and so the fact that he's been struggling to put matches away this week on top of that is not super encouraging. I think really the way to get over that is you just have to choke again and again until it stops happening. And clearly he's not quite there yet. I think what's encouraging about this week is that he won the matches anyway.
Exactly.
You said 7 match points against Ruusuvuori. I think it was 6 against Alcaraz, and he won both matches. Fantastic. Not a trend you would like to keep up, but great for this week.
Yeah, I think a week like this is probably the kind of antidote you need if you want to sort of get rid of that reputation. You're probably right, Owen. I think he comes out of this week looking a lot less nervy, well, hopefully. Had he lost that match as well in the final, I think the scarring would have been absolutely horrible. I don't see him getting over that for ages, but fortunately...
if you lose that, that's the kind of match that makes Guillermo Coria. I hate to use that comparison.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's fair. That's a fair comparison.
Yeah, so I hope Musetti avoids that fate. But yeah, it was a good week for him. Lots of great wins.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Moving on to Alcaraz on the other side. Alcaraz, completely different story. For me, Alcaraz not playing at his best the whole week, but it's becoming a recurring theme for Alcaraz that even when he's not at his best, he is still a scary guy to play. Obviously played Nicola Kuhn at the start of the week and probably played one of the worst matches of the year for him. I don't think that's unfair to say because pretty much nothing was working for him reliably. Drop shots just all over the place, but still came through, of course, in a match tiebreak. Our third set tiebreak, I should say, against Krajinovic as well. I saw you tweeted this, Owen, and you're so right. It's like a movie we've seen the ending to like 1,000 times. 4 set points to Krajinovic in the first set, but everybody knew what was going to happen in the end.
That's a great tweet. I didn't write it, but I appreciate you attributing it to
me. Sorry, Owen.
Okay.
I thought it was you. Never mind. Maybe it might have been somebody with a Peng Shui photo, possibly. Either way, I agree with that tweet. It is so true. It starts to feel very inevitable with Alcaraz when he gets under the player's skin like that. It was just so obvious he was coming through that match. And when he got to the final, I still didn't feel like he was playing his best, but it did have a different feel to me. Now I'll dive straight into the final. So although Alcaraz wasn't playing his best tennis, I think a lot of people probably expected him to come through anyway. When he sort of faced adversity in the second set, he got into the third set, and everybody thought, oh, Alcaraz is winning this for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I was totally, obviously in hindsight, fine. I look like, I'm just saying this because hindsight is 2020. But I genuinely thought this. Like, I was thinking, Musetti is playing a reliably good level of tennis. It's not anything too crazy either. See, if he'd been asked to serve out the match again, I think that might have been different. But because he was just playing a nice, sustainable, sort of not defensive game of tennis, but also not like mega aggressive, just like repeatable tactics, it didn't feel like he had to red line to beat Alcaraz, and I think that's what was important in the end, and that's why the third set could have went either way for me, 50-50.
Yeah, that's a great assessment. I mean, I didn't really watch this match. I caught up with highlights, but had I been tracking it beforehand, I would have said Alcaraz all the way. I think the not so gentle way to put it is that he's just a much better player than Musetti. And so I think
this stage,
and so I think in form, out of form, I would pick him to win this match. But he didn't have a great day, lots of errors from the baseline, and I think Musetti had a very good day. This match probably should have been over in straight sets. So, I mean, I don't know that we learned anything new about Alcaraz through this. We know he does some voodoo magic on match points. He did against Sinner at Wimbledon, like he did against De Minaur way earlier in the year. And he's not winning all of these matches, but he's giving his opponents heart attacks before they win them. So that's something that's good to have in your arsenal.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I definitely think we learned a lot about the Musetti game. Obviously, that goes without saying, but I would just like to elaborate on that a little bit. Okay, but I suppose we knew Musetti could sort of play this kind of tennis, but the way it worked against Alcaraz was really, really fascinating and points towards the potential for a really interesting rivalry for years to come. The same way that Sinner Alcaraz was such a good sort of showcase of firepower, Musetti was able to use variety to beat Alcaraz, something that basically, I don't know, I'm struggling to think of anybody else that sort of did it in the same sort of way. He was able to come in to the net against Alcaraz with these sort of short, sliced approaches, stuff you wouldn't really see other players use. And I mean, if you give Alcaraz a pass from the back of the court, you're probably going to get beat. Lob, pass, whatever. But if you sort of bring him in, you kind of reduce his options a bit. And it worked. I mean, it worked quite a lot of the time in that first set, and it's one of the reasons that Musetti was able to come through that first set really well. Drop shots as well to bring Alcaraz forward. Barely anybody sort of up and coming apart from Alcaraz can do that sort of thing. Musetti was able to give him a sort of taste of his own medicine, and it was really, really exciting to watch. Yeah, I'd watch some of it back on, definitely. If you haven't seen it, by the way, it's a really good match. There's some people saying it was quite ugly because obviously there was a few errors from Alcaraz's racket, but some of the stuff Musetti was coming up with was really, really exciting to see. One other thing I'd like to comment on as well, and it was you I had this conversation with this time on, was it not? Or was it? No, it was Vange. Never mind. He mentioned the forehand and how solid that was. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Backhand return, though, I had to sort of say that to him as well. He was in agreement with that, was incredible. And I'm trying to sort of put a piece together on this, so I don't want to say everything. I don't want to show my whole hand now, but comparing the one-handed backhand return of Tsitsipas to Musetti, there is a stark contrast, because that kick serve that Alcaraz uses out wide to the backhand on the ad court pretty much unstuck Tsitsipas every single time he used it in Barcelona. In Hamburg against Musetti, I mean, the way that Musetti is able to load up on that backhand return, whether it's because of his height, his stature compared to Tsitsipas, I'm not 100% sure. But the way he's able to explode into it is just so much more reliable than Tsitsipas, able to find the angle a lot more reliably off the return than Tsitsipas, and actually able to find Alcaraz's backhand, which seemed nigh impossible when you watch Tsitsipas play Alcaraz. It just makes such a massive difference if you can avoid the +1 shot as the forehand, obviously, on the Alcaraz serve, and it made such a big difference and led to him breaking serve 4 times, which was nothing like Tsitsipas. It's really, really interesting, I feel. And he's one of the one-handers, another one of the one-handers that are likely to excel on this surface, probably more akin to the teams, of the world than the Tsitsipas's, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
do you see comparisons? Yeah, I was going to say.
I didn't see them, but that's super interesting because, like, with a one-hander, a kick serve is so hard to deal with on clay because you're obviously hitting it from so high up. You're probably way back. And it's so hard to get any kind of depth on the ball or even to get a clean hit on it. So if Musetti was handling that well, that's super encouraging. Faster surfaces will be tough, but yeah, he seems to be taking to clay really, really well. He's got like heavy ground strokes, so yeah, I could definitely sort of see him in the team mold a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting to see that about hard courts because the disparity between Musetti's return points won on the clay court and hard court, particularly off the first serve, is massive. I think Musetti comes about 7th on a clay court and he's about, I believe, 36 or so for hard court return.
Well, 7th on clay is huge because he's not ranked 7th.
Yeah.
So if he's like batting above average that much on clay, yeah, he'll be a factor on the surface for sure.
Oh, he definitely will. I mean, obviously, people will start saying that now that he's won a clay court title and a 500 clay court title, of course. But the only thing for me that was holding him back, but it still might hold him back, is nerves. And if he can get over that, then he'll be winning really important matches. And he's not quite there yet, obviously, and he probably has to take a few more really tough losses, I think, in the latter stages of some tournaments, but it's not going to be long, I think, before we're seeing him in sort of quarters, semi-finals of the French Open, probably. Like, he should be there.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the next time he plays like a top player at Roland Garros. Historically, it's not gone very well, but I wonder if he's ready to take that next step now.
Yeah, surely. I think it'll happen. Last point, just to sort of sum up of what happened, basically, or what happens afterwards now. Alcaraz now 14-1 at 500 level this year, having won Rio and Barcelona earlier in the year. Doesn't join, you wouldn't have heard this, when the 2 players that have won their first 6 finals in their careers.
I have no idea.
No, I don't. I wouldn't even make you guess, sorry. But Gulbis and Klizan are the 2 players.
Well, okay. That's interesting. So maybe not a correlation with being an all-time great then.
I mean, unless you consider Gulbis an all-time great, which some people do.
Being a bit sarcastic.
Yeah, some people do. To be fair,
he's had some good ones, but yeah.
Yeah, he's got a name online. I can't remember what it's called now. Never mind. Like something that, in the same way that Tomic gets compared to the GOAT, Gulbis gets called something, but I can't remember now. Anyway, the run for Musetti, this has to be one of the hardest 500 runs I've seen in a while. Well, on clay, Lajovic, Rusevori is probably the easiest one of the bunch, and that's saying something. ADF, Cerundolo, and Alcaraz is incredibly impressive, and anybody who's not taking notes should be, definitely. Musetti now number 31 in the world and Alcaraz at number 5. Moving on.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Happy to very quickly just cover the WTA side of Hamburg.
Yeah, sounds good. I was going to say, I saw even less of this than I did of the ATP side, which amounted to highlights of the final. So I'll do my best here. But.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I'm literally just going to be talking about Bernarda Pera, who won the title, basically has now won 2 titles in a row, having won in Hungary last week. Hasn't dropped a set in those 12 matches, if you also include the qualifying matches. Includes wins over Anett Kontaveit in the final in Hamburg, Siniakova, Rus, Sasnovich. Incredibly impressive, and it's one of those players that you watch in the final and you're kind of like, why on earth hasn't she been beaten players of this ilk in the past, because in full flow, her return game is just off the charts, literally just, goes all out basically on every return. Maybe she's the kind of player that's up and down, and confidence, breeds good shots, but she's got a huge game, and as soon as she sort of gets locked into her lefty forehand to the opponent's backhand, she comes up with a winning shot pretty much, where she has been coming up with a winning shot over the last couple of weeks pretty much every time. Does that come across, that sort of explosiveness in the return game when you're watching highlights on, or do you kind of just think Pera looks like somebody who's going to flash in the pan basically?
I honestly really haven't seen much of her, but I mean these score lines are pretty incredible. Like I think 6-2, 6-4 over Kontaveit is amazing. 6-3, 6-1 over Siniakova. She's breaking like 4 times consistently. So I mean from that alone, that indicates good returning.
Yeah, exactly. Kontaveit, by the way, now extends to love 4 in clay finals. So I don't know if that's coincidence, but certainly in this case, I wouldn't put that down to Kontaveit. Pera was just way too good.
Yeah, and
sorry, go on.
I think that's an okay loss as well, because she was out in the first round of Roland Garros, right? Like, and I think Krejcikova was as well. It's cool to see that she got a win here. So I feel like these tournaments could be like a little bit momentum restoring for them ahead of the hard court season.
Yeah, it's funny you say that actually, because the other point I was going to say was I actually don't see Pera's success carrying forward onto hard courts. She was teeing off in first serves as well as second serves in Hamburg. I just don't see that happening during the North American hard court swing. I mean, the game style is just way too aggressive for that to translate well, to be honest. Awful note to end on for her, but I should just be saying congrats. But I that's my gut feeling. I don't think it's going to go forward.
I think that's fair from what you said about going all out on every return. Like, yeah, that's tough to sustain. Clay, it's easier, get some extra time. Although I think it's also possible that she would adapt her game plan on hard courts to sort of adjust for tougher returning. Like purple patches like this are always interesting because it's hard to tell how much they mean. Like I was recently talking with someone about how Thiem had this patch in like 2019, 2020, where he was winning these tie breaks by hitting like 100-mile-an-hour winners. And I was like, in retrospect, how the hell did that last so long? That is not supposed to work. But sometimes like players will have really weird stretches. Like I think another one was at the start of 2016, Milos Raonic had a period where his returning numbers were like Djokovic like for a little bit. And it was like, did it mean anything? Like, of course not. It's Milos Raonic. But it was a thing for like a month or something. It'll be interesting to see whether Pera can sustain this. I'll be sure to check out some of her matches.
Yeah, it's interesting another note, sorry to slight Sakkari, but Pera has now got 2 titles. That's one more than Maria Sakkari, which has to be noted if you're a Sakkari fan, because if this were me and I was as massive a fan of Sakkari as I am of Andy Murray, and I see Pera rocking up and winning 2 titles in a row, I would be raging. I mean, I would be really annoyed. So it's got to happen for Sakkari at some point, and I just feel like this is quite a good moment to talk about it when people like Pera are just winning titles out of nowhere. Like, fans must be just dying, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine it would be frustrating, but like she's going to get there at some point. I think it's kind of like the Felix thing, where like he was for whatever in so many finals, and it was just like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're better than this. Mm-hmm. And like Sakkari's so good. Like her, the serve, the ground strokes, the fitness, like it's all there. Like at some point there'll be a match that turns the tide for her. Like maybe it'll be a loss that hurts really badly. Maybe it'll be a match she pulls out from like match point down or something. But like, yeah, she's gonna win titles. Way too good not to at some point.
Yeah, I like the confidence one. I hope you're right.
Me too. I like her too.
Yeah. Moving on to Gstaad. First thing I'd like to talk about is the Domi comeback.
Yes.
It's happening. Well, it looks like it's happening. I think massive strides for Domi this week. The kick serve was kind of there, but it looked freakier than ever this week for sure. Like some of them are just mental, so difficult to get back. The forehand, though, obviously, I mean that'll be the talking point for most people, I would say, and it should be. It's really starting to come back to power. I'm sure watching that match with Andy in particular a few months ago, and just thinking this is nothing like the team we'd seen before. The forehand was just nowhere near as good. It was going everywhere. They were showing the average speed. It was 3-4 miles an hour down or something like that from his a couple of years before. It's coming back slowly but surely, definitely, and I don't think his loss to Berrettini is really that worrying for sure. Like the other 3 wins were really good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also Berrettini played really well, and that team probably isn't quite ready to win a match like that. I did watch highlights of this one, and who knows if this was representative of the whole match, but Berrettini was hitting some great backhands, and so when he's doing that,
Yeah,
like you're probably screwed. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it was just so good to see because team like he had not even been winning individual matches. And so for him to get a few at the same time here, it was like the tennis world collectively like could be happy for a little bit because I think everyone had started to root for him more than they already did. So
Of course. Yeah, it's easy to forget he won his first match in 16 odd months or something,
yeah,
a couple of weeks before,
he was on what like
completely,
an
or was it
11
only last
match
week?
losing streak or something. Like it's
Yeah.
brutal. So I'm impressed that he kept grinding because that can't be easy.
No, not at all. And yeah, he saved a match point against Gaston as well, so
Yeah.
he was very close to going out. But obviously, the mental muscles probably haven't waned that much. He's always been a pretty, well, I'm saying that obviously his US Open final was very scrappy, but I've always thought he's been a mental giant. Actually, I think people can cite stuff like that, but overall, Dominic Thiem's record in pressure situations is pretty damn good.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think in 2020 he went like 5 for 5 in tie breaks against Rafa, something like that.
yeah,
Just
he
like
did.
winning
Yeah,
tie breaks against Djokovic at the World Tour Finals from too many breaks down. Yeah, he has done some unreal things.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just talked about it exactly. Being able to hit like crazy 100 mile an hour, and that Djokovic tiebreak was the one I thought of actually. As soon as you said that, he hits this crazy backhand cross court that just like it should not be possible from that position.
Yeah, I
It's
remember
crazy.
how I felt when I watched that because he had come back from 0-4 to 5-4, and then Djokovic hits this backhand that hangs off just a little bit, and I was like, "Team is going to demolish this, isn't he?" And then he hits the winner. I'm like, "This guy is insane." Yeah,
It
it's
was
amazing.
insane. It was very cool, exactly. That's why he's so lovable. So fingers crossed he keeps coming back. He is playing this week, I think. Can't remember who's playing off the top of my head,
Yeah,
but
I
he'll have a
saw a
chance.
tweet that should say. You can keep talking while I pull it up.
Cool. Yeah, the bit on Berrettini though, as I segue into the final, Berrettini was able to just roll on serve, and I mean, people forget how much of an advantage it is having a really good serve when you're at altitude and just being able to rain that down non-stop. Basically, you don't even have to put too much effort into it, but it can be very, very difficult to return. And it probably wasn't the only thing that unstuck Team. To be fair, in that match, he could have done better on serve himself. But it was one of the reasons for Berrettini only being broken once, and then against Casper Ruud, I mean, he wasn't broken for the first 2 sets, and it really was an absolute struggle for Ruud because Berrettini was in his element. One other thing as well, along with the big serving advantage at altitude, people forget the slice is a very effective shot at altitude too. There was an article on it, and I looked for it for so long this morning, I couldn't find it, so I can't get into the exact science of it, unfortunately. But when the air is thinner, the slice does dip more than it would normally, whereas topspin doesn't have as much of an effect, conversely. So when you're at altitude, it skips through the court really well. And unfortunately for Berrettini, Ruud is one of the only people who can deal with that particularly well. And I don't think there's many other people that deal with it as well as Ruud with the insane racket head speed that he's able to generate under the ball. Obviously, Nadal's probably the only other person that I can think of, but Ruud's certainly up there as maybe top 3 for dealing with slices because he camps in that court anyway. Like there will come a point where he's able to come get around the slice no matter how wide you find it. So yeah, it was a bit of a bad matchup from the ground, but the serve really, really kept him in it. Did you see any of the pressure points on? Because it really was close, and I think the tiebreak was the biggest difference.
Yeah, I saw a couple of them. I know that Berrettini's forehand kind of crumbles in the third set
Yeah,
on some big points, and that was weird to see. But I also saw in the first set, like, Ruud hit a forehand close to the line. Berrettini keeps playing. Ruud hits a winner, and then Berrettini challenges, and the umpire calls it out. And that was on break point for
yeah.
Ruud, and that really screwed him over. So I saw that, and I was like, that sucks. So I was happy for him that he came back to win the match because that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of the same for Alcaraz, wasn't it? But it didn't end up being
Right,
a
with the double
crucial point.
bounce, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, you don't want to see injustice like that, and you kind of want it to be amended in the end. That was a really big point for it to happen on. And it is quite rare that happens, but yeah, yeah, the forehand kind of crumbled in the tiebreak as well.
Mhm.
Completely out of character, actually. I really don't know what happened. He had two serve plus ones and missed both of them.
Yeah.
That was sort of 2-1 to Ruud in the tiebreak, and that was enough for him to take it,
That's
basically.
bizarre, yeah. I mean, overall, though, I'm really impressed with Ruud because, like you said, the conditions favoring Berrettini that much. And I think with the serve, it's hard enough to beat Berrettini from a set down. I mean, Djokovic is really the only one who does that. So I'm impressed that Ruud was able to kind of hang in there long enough for Berrettini to self-destruct. Like, I think that's a win that's, like, in character for a top player. So it's cool to see
Yeah,
Ruud kind of embracing that.
yeah, yeah. That's a good segue. You best segues on because saying that Ruud has now won his ninth title. 9 of those titles are 250s.
Ah, right. This
Eight of
again.
them,
Is he a
eight of them are
250
two.
farmer? Um,
You can't not talk about it. I mean, it's getting to the point where people are like that's all people are
well,
talking about on Twitter, basically, when they're talking about the
but he's
win,
a
which is
Roland Garros
ridiculous.
finalist. Like, what are we
I
talking
know
about here?
exactly,
Like,
exactly,
I
yeah,
mean, look, that he played a bad final at Roland Garros, but it was his first one. Like I think before the French Open, I would have like bought into this narrative more, but after seeing some of the stuff he did there, like my enduring memory of him there is in the semi against Cilic. They split sets, and at the start of the third, Ruud is up a break, and he's like hunting for a double break. And basically, it's this pattern where like he hits a winner to get to break point, and then Cilic like hits a winner to save it. And Ruud was getting really annoyed with himself after every breakpoint Cilic saved. And I was watching this, I was like, I don't understand why he's getting mad. Like he's playing really, really well. This is the best I've ever seen him play. But then I
Mhm.
realized, like, no, this is just like the champion mindset. Like this is what Djokovic does, where like he's playing
Yeah,
really well and it's still not enough. And I had never seen that from Ruud before. But I saw it in that match, and he kind of peaked for the last three sets to take it away from Cilic. And so now
Mhm.
that I know he's capable of that, I'm on the Ruud bandwagon.
Yeah. I think as well, actually, like I that's a really interesting observation you've made there, actually, because I totally agree. And to be fair, Berrettini I think does a lot of the same stuff, but Berrettini is now love 11 against top 10 in the last 17 months. I feel like that's more indicative of his sort of not his peak, of course, not his peak, because he can beat top 10 players. That's not what I'm saying, but I think Ruud is more worthy of top 10 status than Berrettini at the moment for sure. And I think people try to make the opposite argument. Yeah, I think people are quite obtuse when they look at titles as the only factor for somebody's success. French Open final, Miami final, a ton of Masters semis over the last year or so. I mean, Ruud's stock is just growing like week by week. It's going to be a matter of time before something happens for him. For me, more so than Berrettini, who, yeah, that struggle against top 10 isn't coincidental. I don't think. That's basically what I'm trying
Yeah,
to
I
say.
agree. Like he's just got very pronounced limits. Like he's great, but I don't know if he's better than great. Like I think,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's not a coincidence when you go that long without a top 10 win. Like his, serve incredible, forehand incredible, slice is really good. The movement is not great, but it's not bad. The problem is like when he comes up against someone who can neutralize the serve and the forehand, he does not really have an answer. Um, and I
Yeah,
don't know if that sort of thing is going to change. Like
yeah,
I could see him winning a major, probably Wimbledon. I think he'll continue to go deep in a lot of places. Um, but I don't know if I ever see him beating like a world number one.
yeah. I agree, but I do think is potential at Wimbledon is seriously
Yeah,
big. So it could actually happen. But yeah, that's the only place I could see it happening at the moment. That's it's too big a weakness for me for sure. A few quick stats on Ruud's clay court 250s, just for people who are interested. He's played. I was quite interested to put it into perspective. He's played 23 clay court 250s for his career. Nadal has played 15. Djokovic has played 14. Federer 14, and Murray has played one. So already he's played more than all four of those guys, and he's only 23 years old. He does play a lot of them, and I don't know if maybe there should be a bit of rescheduling
Yeah,
done.
I
Genuinely.
wanted to ask, like, what do you think his rationale is for playing them? Do you think it's points? Do you think it's form? Because it's a lot of them. You're right.
Uh, I, yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know. Like he should have played Hamburg, right? Like he's good enough to win Hamburg,
Yeah,
but
maybe he would have. Like, well, yeah, maybe
yeah,
not. But yeah, I don't know.
I guess points are obviously, there's a lot of going on behind the scenes, and you probably get a massive appearance fee for turning up at this event compared to that event. I don't know. I'm not sure. They already had Alcaraz at Hamburg, so they didn't need Ruud it. I don't know. I don't really know exactly how it works, but it's odd. It perplexes me, and I definitely think there should be a little bit of a reduced schedule going on.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
mean, I
feeling.
feel like at this point, now that he's a top player, um, is a threat to go deep at pretty much any clay court event. I don't know if he needs it anymore. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
deny it's been effective getting his ranking up, and like totally legitimate as well. Like people, you can call it vulturing or whatever you want. Like these are ranking points. Like no ranking point is
Yeah.
more or less legitimate than another ranking point. But yeah, I would like to see him making runs at the biggest events possible now because he's good enough. So
Yeah. Agreed on. Moving on to Palermo to close on the WTA side. Begu won the title there against Lucia Bronzetti even. Quick note on Begu's second round against Oceane Dodin. It was a very tough match for her. Again, she had a tough match at the start of the year against her in Australia. She had to save match points there. Difficult to handle Dodin's ball in general. If you haven't seen her play, definitely worth watching her play. She does hit a massive, massive ball. And a lot of the time, it can just be a case of having to outlast her and wait for the dip. Basically, it's the sort of game that will probably just keep getting bigger and bigger and more consistent. So it's probably a name you should be looking out for. If you haven't seen any matches from the tournament, that's probably the one to watch. It was very, very good. Some fantastic shot making.
I'm looking at the stats here. It looks like Dodin actually won more points total in the match, 86-81.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is interesting.
Wow. Yeah. I think it was a slow start for Begu in the first set, right?
Yeah,
6-1 maybe.
1-6. Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really good match. Definitely worth watching. On to the semi-final, and she was against Sara Sorribes Tormo, and I'm pretty sure that's a favourite of my guests here,
Yeah,
potentially.
you're going to make me talk about this, aren't you? Yeah,
Yeah,
so
if you can.
I was telling Jack before this episode started, I had time when this match was happening, so I go onto Tennis Channel, and I have Tennis Channel Plus, and I scroll through the channels, and nothing is showing it. Like they're showing a replay of the Wimbledon finals this year, and all other channels said like the play for the day has ended. So there was just no way to watch this, and I had to watch the live scores as one of my favorite players lost, and that was a shame. Um, yeah, like being a fan of Sorribes Tormo is an interesting experience because, and at some point I will write about this. But when she plays, like more often than not, the match is on the other player's racket because of the power disparity. Like she hits with a lot of spin, but not a lot of power and not a lot of depth. But at the same time, she's maybe the fittest player on tour. She defends insanely well, and she's got a good slice. So, like, it's on your racket, but she also gives you every possible opportunity to self destruct. And I think that creates such an interesting dynamic because it sort of means like players have to push like their physical and mental limits, if not the limits of their game, to beat her, and that often results in really fun matches. At the same time, it makes it really hard for her to like win a tournament because
Yeah.
it's hard to play 4 matches in a row without running into like an accurate power player who is her kryptonite. And it seems like that's what happened here. Like up a set and couldn't quite close the deal.
Yeah.
But I think she won like either 2 or 3 matches in a row to get to the semis. So that's a good result.
That's a win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark Petch's explanation of this, I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, and I think I agree with him, but I still think SST is probably most effective on a clay court. He said spin without pace generally leaves you open to just getting annihilated basically.
Yeah.
Eventually in a point. But
He actually said that in a reply to me, because I tweeted like, I can't figure out why, but Sorribes Tormo is worse on clay than she is on a hard court. And he had a good explanation. Like he said, the slice sits up and gets killed.
The slice. Okay.
And also like the short balls really just sit there, and the top spin kind of floats right into the opponent's strike zone. I think on hard courts it's easier to push an opponent back.
I was going to say, it's not even really... I kind of thought it was more because of the counter-punching factor, but I don't actually know how much of a counter-puncher Sara Sorribes Tormo is,
no,
to be honest.
I mean, it's kind of lacking the punch part of counter-punching.
Just counter. Exactly.
And I think on clay, like we say a lot that it sort of makes defense easier, and in a way it does, but it's also, like, you need a big weapon on clay. Because if you don't have one, it's just impossible to hit through the court. And so I think what she gains in defense, she loses more than that on the offensive side of things. She actually does pretty well on grass because the slice stays low. She has good touch, so she can get to net. And she moves pretty well on the grass, so she can still defend there. The match I always talk about is last year she played this insane 3-hour match with Kerber at Wimbledon in the second round.
I remember that.
I think it was the best match of the year. It was like seriously epic points, first ball to last. I think the average length of the rally was like 8 shots, which is insane for a grass court match. So if you haven't seen that, try to find it somewhere, pirate the match, like, because Wimbledon has only posted 3-minute highlights, which they need to do a better job of. But yeah, like, she's been having a bit of a tough time this year. I think her ranking has dipped from mid-30s to like low mid-40s. But yeah, I'm excited to see what she does in the hard court season.
Yeah, fingers crossed for her. She was quite good this time last year. I'm sure made that run that wasn't too deep actually, but she beat Barty, of course, at the Olympics.
I watched that match. That was amazing. That was the best I've ever seen someone expose Barty's lack of a topspin backhand. Because she just went there with high balls constantly. I think Barty hit like 50 plus on force errors. And like that's how she'll beat you. Like, she will just make your game completely implode in on itself, and you'll be miserable by the time the match is over. And it's not always pretty, but it's amazing to watch.
Yeah, I'm quite excited to see how she does. Maiden final for Lucia Bronzetti. Just quick sum up here. Begu now on her 5th title of her career, first in 5 years. Moved up to number 33 in the world, 11 spots off her career high ranking. Love this stat from Twitter user Silas. This is an absolute clutch from a fan, if ever there was one. The years Begu has won a title, Kvitova has made the 4th round or better at the US Open.
Wow.
So expect a deep run from Kvitova this year.
Look out, WTA.
Exactly.
And that'd be nice to see, because Kvitova hasn't had a great run in a little bit. So.
No, not for a while. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but not at a slam.
Yeah.
Not at any tournament, really, for a while.
There's actually a line from a Sorribes Tormo interview where she says, I'm never going to hit the ball like Petra, Kvitova. So she has to find other ways to improve. And that was the player she singled out as someone who hits the ball really hard.
So she is I think she is the poster girl for hitting the ball hard. She absolutely annihilates every time. Insane. It's amazing. Yeah. Okay. We'll close up there, Owen, if that's all right. Thank you very much for joining me, as always, and thank you, listener, for listening this far through. If you want to catch any of Owen's work, go to @TennisNation on Twitter. Any of my work, on the line _Jack on Twitter as well, or ontheline tennis.uk. Thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.